Hey, it's Mr. Doro. Today I'm going to be introducing to you the topic of dimensional analysis. This might be new to most of you, but I guarantee if you pay attention and if you just keep working at this, you're going to just do great. I want you to make a proper action line to convert between units when we're done. Just a couple definitions that you need to know for dimensional analysis. One is a conversion factor. Conversion factors are extremely important in dimensional analysis. That's a ratio of two different units, but they have the same value, and I've given you some examples. This is a ratio, one thing over another. 1 foot is always going to equal exactly 12 inches. They're equal to each other. They mean the same thing. They're not the same number, but they're the same value. 1 foot is 12 inches, or we could say 12 inches is 1 foot each time. Same thing over on this side. 1 day is 24 hours, or we could say 24 hours is 1 day. They're equal to each other in value, although they have different numbers, just like my height. If I said my height was 6'2", or if I said it was 74 inches, that means the same thing. Now, an action line is the tool that we're going to use to make these conversions, and that's how we do it on paper. Some of you, the things I go through today, you're going to say, I don't need an action line for that, but trust me, you need to know how to do an action line, because there will be problems that we have to do that there's really not many ways you can do them besides setting them up in an action line. So make sure you learn the process here today. Here's an example of a very simple action line. Action lines always start with the starting amount that you're given in the problem with the units. Make sure you write the units. You can abbreviate the units. This one's not abbreviated, but you can do that. And then this is where you use your conversion factor. Notice what happens here, and you'll hear me say this. The units that you started out with, you copy down to the bottom of the next one. So when you decide whether you want the 1 foot on top or the 12 inches on top, then you need to copy down that unit, and then we switch over because our ending amount is feet. And so what we do in our math here is this is in the numerator, this is in the denominator, the inches cancel each other out. We're left over with just foot or feet on top, and we'll show you how to do the math on that too. Okay, this is going to be our very first action line. It's totally made up. I just made it up. It says if there are 26.1 warts in a juggle and 1.092 juggles in a saw, how many saws are there in 8.06 warts? You may look at that. You may say, who cares? Well, I care that you know how to do an action line properly. So first of all, we got to come up with our conversion factors. And so for our conversion factors, we have 26.1 warts in how many juggles? Right up here in the problem, it says 26.1 warts in a juggle. So that would be in one juggle. And then it says how many saws are, 1.092 juggles in a saw. So there's 1.092 juggles in one saw. So there's our conversion factors. And this is what we're given in the problem. This is our starting. We have 8.06 warts. These are all conversion factors, the other things. And we want to end up with how many saws there are. So we're going to make our first action lines. We start with what we're given, which is 8.06 warts. And then we do our action line, we underline it. Now you might wonder what goes down here. Remember, we copy down. We take this unit only, not the number, just the unit, and we copy the unit down. And so we're going to put warts down here, and then we look at our conversion factors. What can we relate warts to change it over? We want to get to saws. Well, we can't go right from warts to saws, but we can go from warts to juggles, and so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put juggles on top. Where do we get the numbers? Right from our conversion factor, and we just like copying. One juggle is 26.1 warts. Now what's going to happen here is these warts are going to cancel each other out, and if I were to stop my action line right now, I have juggles on top, but I don't want juggles, I want saws, which means I can just continue this action line on. What unit's going to go down here on the bottom? That's right, you're going to copy down the juggles. Don't copy the number down, just the unit. And then we look at our conversion factor. We can convert juggles to saws, 1.092 juggles. 1.092 juggles for one saw. Now look what happens. Juggles on top and juggles on bottom, they cancel each other out, and we have saws on top, which is what we want. So I'm going to show you how to calculate this right now. Get out your handy dandy calculator and take this and start with writing, start with writing 8.0 or typing in 8.06 in there. Everything on top we're going to hit the times button for. Everything on bottom we're going to hit the divide button for. So 8.06 times 1. times 1, divided by 26.1, divided by 1.092. Or you can just put 8.06 times 1 divided by this, times 1 divided by this if you want to. Do that right now. And the answer I got was 0.28279511 saws, but now we need to know about significant figures. Significant figures and action lines, we're multiplying and dividing, so we're looking for the least number of sig figs used. But be careful, because this sometimes, usually when you have a 1 in here, it's exact numbers. 26.1 warts is exactly 1 juggle. And so that doesn't count in our significant figures. We look at this one that we started out with, that's 3 sig figs. This is 3 sig figs, that's 4. So we want 3 sig figs in our final answer. And so our final answer is these 3 sig figs. We look at that one, that says we rounded up, and we need to write this in scientific notation, which is 2.83 times 10 to the negative first. We only move the decimal over one place right there, saws. And we just did our first action line together. Congratulations. Here's one that's a little more practical and wants to know how many millimeters are in 3.64 times 10 to the minus third meters. I have the conversion factor, which you guys will have memorized because you'll know what the prefixes mean. This is 1 meter is 1,000 or 10 to the third. And that 10 to the third, in this case, when we just say that, it means 1 times 10 to the third millimeters, which is 1,000. And so that's our conversion factor. So we start out with what we're given, and we are given this number 3.64, that whole thing, times 10 to the negative third. That's included in there. Now what unit is going to go down here on the bottom of this next section? That's right, we're going to copy down meters, and then we're going to change meters to what we know, which is millimeters, and we're going to put in our conversion factor. 1 meter is 10 to the third millimeters. Now when we type this in our calculator, we're going to type this in as 1E3. That means 1 times 10 to the third, not 10E3. And so you just type in everything on top because meters cancel out, millimeters ends up on top, and that's what we want. So 3.64 EE minus 3 times 1E3 divided by 1. So type that in now. And hopefully the answer you got was 3.64. That would be in millimeters. And the sig figs are whatever you started out with because these are exact quantities. 1,000 millimeters is exactly 1 meter. That's just a one-step conversion for metric units. Here's one that's a little tougher. It says how many millimoles are there in 9.42 times 10 to the 8th gigamoles. So we need to know what our conversion factors are. Our conversion factors for these, we don't know how many gigamoles are in a millimole. Maybe you do. But I'd like to go back to the base unit each time, one without a prefix. So what we need to do is in our conversion factors, we're going to put a 1 in the bigger of the two between gigamoles and moles. Gigamoles are bigger, and I want to know how many moles are in a gigamole, and that would be 10 to the 9th. Or 1 billion on that. And then moles and millimoles, the moles are bigger, so I'm going to put a 1 there, and there are 10 to the third, or 1,000 millimoles in there. So on our action line, we start out with what we're given, which is this guy right here, 9.42 times 10 to the 8th gigamoles. And then we're going to copy down the unit only, so we're going to put gigamoles here. And then we can switch gigamoles over to moles. This is and I'm going to copy from my conversion factor, 10 to the 9th and 1. And then we're going to continue on because gigamoles cancel out, but we still got moles on top. So we want millimoles. Moles goes down here, copy down. Put millimoles, because I can go now to millimoles. And from my conversion factor, there is 1 mole for every 10 to the third millimoles. And so then moles cancel out. I got millimoles on top. I can multiply everything on top, divide by everything on bottom, and I get 9.42 times 10 to the 20th millimoles. And I like a box around that. Normally I'd write it right up here, but I just ran out of room. Now if you're not getting that answer, then you're probably putting this number here in wrong. This is 1E9, you have to put it in, and 1E3. So make sure you're trying these out. It's important that you know how to do the calculations. Okay, on this one, I've given you a 2.81 days. I want to know how many seconds. I've actually set up the action line for you, and notice that these will end up canceling out days and days, hours and hours, minutes and minutes, and so those will cancel out. But you need to put the numbers in, the conversion factors, and I've given you the answer too. So I want you to try to calculate it and see if you get the same answer I get: 2.43 times 10 to the fifth seconds. Go ahead and do that right now. And finally, I got a couple problems that I'd like you to set up the action lines and calculate them out. How many days are there in 9.56 times 10 to the 7th seconds? Look at the last screen, go back to that, and you're kind of doing the opposite. You're going from seconds back to days. And then put the answer in the correct scientific notation in sig figs. And how many grams are there in 26.34 centigrams? I fully realize that there are some of you that can do this without doing the action line. But the whole point of this is I want you to do an action line on each one of these. All right, so that you can know how to do it for later on. Have a nice day.